Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications to receive all new. Join our exciting family with special content, and watch the video until the end for details. Thank you for being with us. A bit of background. My brother and I were both 10 years old at the time, and we were attending swimming lessons at a public pool roughly 10 minutes from our house. We would head there every Friday evening for our lesson, and afterward, we'd usually relax in the spa pool until my dad was ready to leave. On one specific Friday night, my brother and I were in the spa pool doing kid stuff when I noticed a man sitting directly across from the spa, just staring at me. The man was extremely tall and thin, with a very sharp nose and small, button-like eyes. He had very short, thin gray hair, and his skin appeared unusually red. I didn't think much of it at the time because I had seen this man around the pool before. I also recall that my dad might have spoken with him once. Still, his gaze was unsettling, and it made me so uncomfortable that I had to get out of the spa and sit outside while waiting for my dad. After that, I started seeing him everywhere. Wherever I went, he seemed to be there. The grocery store, the mall, outside my school, and always at my Friday night swimming lessons. I never mentioned this to my dad. I thought maybe I was overreacting and was completely oblivious to the obvious danger. I remember one instance when I was at a department store with my mom and saw him standing at the end of every aisle we walked down. Alarm bells went off when I noticed him carrying a camera with him. He was always dressed entirely in black, with his camera bag slung around his neck. One day, I was at the mall with a few friends when one of them pointed him out before I even noticed him. I told them about what was going on and how he always looked at me. My friend's older sister suggested I inform security so they could remove him. I did exactly that, and as soon as he saw them approaching, he got up and left. Fast forward about 2 years. I hadn't seen my stalker acquaintance for quite some time now, and it was becoming a distant memory, or so I thought. Until one day, I was called into the school office because my uncle was there to pick me up early. I was confused but assumed it was a last-minute arrangement. As I approached the office, I saw him there, arms open, waiting for me. I felt nauseous. I had completely forgotten about this man, and 2 years later, he had the audacity to show up and try to take me out of school. I walked right past him and went straight to the receptionist, simply saying, "This man is not my uncle." I then returned to class. Sometimes, my school would have lunch outdoors, and whenever we did, I would see him standing nearby. He would wave at me and try to signal me over, holding up a chocolate bar as if it were bait. These random appearances at my school continued until the school had to contact my parents and inform them about the situation. My dad was deeply upset and insisted on contacting the police so we could obtain a restraining order. That's when we discovered something truly horrifying about this man. It turned out he was a convicted sex offender. The police confiscated his camera and found hundreds of photos of me, some of which was zoomed in on my bedroom windows. He was arrested, and we secured a restraining order against him. Thankfully, I haven't seen him since. This occurred around 13 years back. I used to play football, and I'm a fairly large guy. At the time, I was in my late 20s and resided in a pleasant neighborhood in Arizona. Needless to say, I didn't have much to fret about during the night. I had 2 roommates living with me back then, so there always seemed to be someone at home with me after dark. I returned from a late business trip around midnight, entered the house utterly exhausted, dropped all my stuff, and headed straight to bed. I'm a deep sleeper, so it takes something quite loud to wake me up. Around 3 a.m., I heard a loud banging on my door. It sounded as if someone was attempting to kick my door down. I'd never heard anything like that before. Since it was a Saturday, I assumed my roommates had gone out to the bars and forgotten their keys. Reluctantly, I dragged myself out of bed, walked down the hallway in the dark, and noticed that all the bedroom doors were open and no roommates were around. It must be them, I thought. They're messing with me. I reached my front door and peered through the peephole, only to see a young woman standing on the other side. She appeared homeless but was somewhat cute. She wore an oversized sweatshirt, jeans, and a beanie. Let me remind you, this was Arizona in the peak of summer. It had to be at least 95 degrees at that time, so her outfit was odd. She was acting frantic, almost as if she were being chased. I considered opening the door to check if she was okay, but then she started laughing. It was a deeply unsettling laugh, which froze me in my tracks. I need to pee. Please let me in. I just stood behind the door silently, observing her through the peephole. I wasn't scared at that moment, just annoyed and about to yell at her to get lost. Then, all of a sudden, she turned around and skipped down my driveway like a child. I thought to myself, this girl is probably high on drugs or something. I went back to bed, and 30 minutes later, I was just about to drift off when the knocking resumed. Now I was livid, ready to storm back to the front door and give this woman a piece of my mind. But this time, when I looked through the peephole, it was a man. He was dressed almost identically to the woman. He was scrawny-looking, not physically imposing in any way, but he also appeared as unhinged as she did. I then noticed the girl behind him, jumping up and down and laughing. The guy leaned close to the peephole. Yo, you better let us in. My girl needs to pee. To be honest, I was a bit spooked now. I'd seen scenarios like this in horror films, so I backed away from the door, went to the kitchen, and grabbed a knife. Then I retreated to my room and hid in my closet. I figured that if they broke in, at least they wouldn't spot me right away, and I could launch a counterattack. 2 hours passed without any more noise, and I ended up falling asleep in my closet with the knife still in my hand. That's when I heard tapping on my bedroom window. My bedroom is on the ground floor and accessible from the backyard. With the lights off, I crept over to the window and cautiously pushed aside one of the blinds. It was the woman peering into my bedroom, but not directly at me, and she was gently tapping the glass. In the distance, I saw the guy, completely naked, doing cannonballs in my pool. Instinctively, I began yelling, "Hey, get the hell out of my pool!" This immediately drew the woman's attention toward me. We locked eyes, mere inches apart through the window. She had the most terrifying smile I'd ever seen, and then she started giggling. That terrified me beyond belief. I called the cops immediately, telling them some deranged, drugged-up lunatics were in my backyard and that I feared for my life. I went into my bathroom, locked the door, and waited anxiously for the "Here's Johnny" moment. The dispatcher called back, informing me that the police had arrived but found no one outside the house. They must have fled down the alley when they saw the cops approaching. The next day, I noticed neighborhood watch flyers posted everywhere, warning us that over the past 3 nights, 6 homes had been broken into, 4 dogs had been brutally attacked, and advising us to stay alert for any suspicious individuals in the area. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but thankfully, I never saw or heard from those lunatics again. Since that night, I've installed a security system, purchased a handgun, and now I sleep soundly. But the expression on that woman's face still haunts my dreams. An incident from several years ago. I was around 12 or 13 years old at the time, and I was staying at a hotel with my parents. My aunt, uncle, and cousin, who was a year older than me, were also there. One evening, our parents decided to grab coffee together at a cafe located in the hotel lobby. It's worth noting that this hotel was spread across multiple buildings. The cafe they went to was several buildings away from where we were staying, but for my cousin and me, it wasn't an issue since the pool was just downstairs. At about 8 p.m., we texted our parents, put on our swimsuits, and headed down to the pool. At first, everything seemed normal. We swam around, and my cousin and I chatted about school, relationships, and other things. Eventually, we ended up floating quietly on our backs, gazing at the stars. Without looking over at my cousin, I said something like, "Wow, it's such a nice night, huh?" I said it in a slightly strange tone, hoping to get a laugh out of her. That's when I heard a guy chuckle. I immediately sat up in the water, my face turning red. I hadn't realized that I had drifted away from my cousin and was now next to some random guy. He appeared to be in his early 20s and gave me a creepy smile. Being 13 and very shy, I gave a nervous laugh and quickly swam back over to my cousin. She burst into laughter, teasing me and jokingly asking if he was cute and whether he had really laughed at my weird voice. I was too embarrassed to find humor in the situation and stayed close to her, avoiding looking back toward the edge of the pool where he was now sitting. My cousin, whose name is Lizzie, moved on casually, chatting about random topics as we continued to hang out in the pool. However, she gradually grew quieter, eventually splashing me playfully to get my attention. "Your new boyfriend is still watching us," she remarked. Though she was still smiling, there was an uneasy tone in her voice. I glanced over, and sure enough, he was still sitting on the edge of the pool, staring at us. She splashed me again. "Don't pay him any mind. You don't know much about guys, but I do, and the key is to just ignore them." She wasn't entirely wrong. I was homeschooled and rarely interacted with boys, especially ones older than me. In my eyes, she was an expert on the subject, full of worldly wisdom. I mimicked her demeanor. "Maybe we should call one of our moms," I suggested, but she shook her head. "No, let's just go back to the hotel room. I don't want to freak my mom out." That sounded like a good idea to both of us. Her mom could be pretty intimidating when upset. "We can text her once we're upstairs," she added. I nodded, climbed out of the pool, and grabbed our towels and shoes. She made some joke about what was going on, but I didn't hear it. The guy was now standing up, though he seemed relaxed while gathering his things. When I glanced back at Lizzie, her expression confirmed that she had noticed him too, but she kept putting on her shoes, and I followed her lead, walking closely behind her. We approached the stairs and started climbing them. Both of us were a little nervous but still hoped this was all just a coincidence, until we heard footsteps behind us. A quick glance revealed that the guy was only a flight below us, meeting my gaze with a disturbing grin. He didn't appear drunk or high, at least from my sheltered perspective. "Lizzie," I whispered, trying to alert her to his proximity. "I know. Let's get off on the wrong floor. We can loop back around and head to our rooms, then call my mom from there." She began moving faster up the stairs. I could see the anxiety on her face. As someone who loved mystery novels, this felt like the best course of action. So we got off 2 floors early, speed walking down the hallway and around the corner. Just as we were out of sight, Lizzie grabbed my hand and took off running, nearly pulling me off my feet. Before that moment, I had never truly been scared of anything in my life, but fear is contagious. We heard the echo of footsteps behind us on the same floor we had chosen to circle back on. I gripped her hand tightly, keeping pace with her as we darted around one corner after another until we found the stairwell again, taking the steps 2 at a time back to our floor. A high-pitched squeal escaped Lizzie, who was now dragging me along. I was terrified, practically paralyzed, stumbling up the stairs and then down the hall to our floor. She jammed the key into our room's door, pushed me inside, and immediately slammed it shut, drawing the curtains. As soon as we were inside, she burst into tears. Once the door was closed, she cried more from adrenaline than anything else, but after calming down, she quickly picked up the phone and tried calling her mom, who didn't answer. We then tried my mom, but she didn't pick up either. It felt like we waited for hours, sitting on the bed and shivering in our still damp swimsuits. Eventually, though, we calmed ourselves by rationalizing what had happened. Maybe he hadn't been following us. Perhaps we had simply exited on his floor by chance. When you're scared, it's easy to convince yourself that everything was just one big coincidence. Once we were fully calm, we decided to do something incredibly foolish. Go to the car to retrieve Lizzie's activity bag, which contained snacks and her Game Boy. At the time, it seemed like a smart idea because we believed the earlier events had been a misunderstanding, and we were both starving. Wrapped in towels, she grabbed her mom's keys and her cell phone, and we devised a plan at the hotel room door, just to be cautious. If we saw the pool guy again, we would lock ourselves in the car and start calling every number we could think of. And if he showed up while we were heading back, we'd run straight to the lobby and find our parents. It seemed foolproof at the time, but looking back now, it's the kind of reckless plan you see in horror movies. Nothing happened until we reached the parking lot outside our building. Then we heard a voice calling out to us from down the hallway. "Hey, where do you two think you're going, cuties?" We turned around and saw the pool guy standing at the end of the hall. Lizzie let out an unearthly screech and grabbed my hand, dragging me along before I could get a better look. She yanked open the car door and dove inside as I tumbled in after her, locking the door as soon as we were both in. As soon as she caught her breath, she untangled herself from me, crawled into the farthest row of the minivan, and motioned for me to join her. I huddled down between the seats beside her. That's when we heard tapping. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the sound was unmistakable. Lizzie pulled me close, staying still as if he wouldn't see us if we remained frozen. I don't know how long we stayed there, paralyzed with fear, and I couldn't decide what was worse, the darkness of keeping my eyes closed or what I might see if I opened them. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. Neither of us moved for the next 10 to 15 minutes. I began crying, overwhelmed with fear, while Lizzie remained deathly still. Eventually, she started nudging me to sit up. A moment later, I realized she was dialing numbers on the phone, listening to each of our parents' voicemail greetings. She didn't call 911. Looking back, we absolutely should have, but at the time, I thought 911 was only for emergencies like house fires or murders, not for situations involving a guy in his 20s following young girls to a car. I know, it sounds stupid now. He was nowhere to be seen. We eventually bolted out of the car and ran back to the hotel, collapsing into sobs when our parents returned. They regretted not having their phones on and comforted us, eventually convincing us that although the guy was creepy, we hadn't been in real danger. I think they believed that was true, and honestly, at the time, it's what we wanted to believe. Lizzie and I saw him a few more times after that, mostly at night when he sat by the pool, giving us a creepy grin whenever we passed. But we were always with our parents until we left the hotel. When he saw us leaving with them, he gave us a sad little wave that no one but me noticed. Then he mouthed something to me, and I think he said, "See you later, cutie." I didn't tell my parents. It didn't seem important at the time. It wasn't until years later that I fully grasped how unsettling this man truly was. I find it hard to believe he was harmless and merely thought it was amusing to follow two preteen girls around a hotel. Either way, I'm glad I never encountered him again. There's always a reason to be cautious.